Okay, so I'm Chad, and like Rebecca said, um, I met them when I was pastoring in Plattsburgh, New York. I'd always been a counselor in some way or another. That's always been my heart to help people. And so for about 25 years as a pastor, I spent a lot of time counseling and helping others, a lot of times in places where there wasn't a lot of other mental health facilities or other places where people could go to get help. And I started to do that more and more. And um, then when COVID hit, everything in everybody's life kind of got turned upside down. And I think a lot of people spent some time processing how they're spending their time and spending their life. And I noticed during that time period, I was counseling a lot, so much that it was hard for me to continue to run a church. And so I started thinking about my future and what I want to do with the rest of my life and where I find the most fulfillment. And for me, that was in counseling full time. So I did what I needed to do some prep and get ready for that, and then found my way to South Carolina, working in the church. I never got to pick where I wanted to live, so I knew I wanted to be east of the Mississippi and south of the Mason-Dixon line. I did not want to deal with snow or cold, and so this is where I found a great job working with a great organization. um, I see now about 80 patients. I usually do about 50 a week. And those are hour-long sessions everywhere from the ages of 2 to, I think my oldest patient right now is 65. But over the last 26 years, one of the things that I have kind of learned is that a lot of times when we think of counseling or we think of mental health, we think of the things that are wrong. Somebody goes to counseling because something's broken, because they're wounded, because they're hurt. And a lot of counseling models, like really psychology in general, is kind of based on that medical model. Somebody's broken, they need to be diagnosed and to be fixed. Um, I started as I kind of just naturally grew and learned more and was exposed to more, approaching things in a way that felt more natural for me, which was from a wellness model. And then, of course, started looking at other, psychological schools of thoughts and modalities that kind of were in line with that, and stumbled into somewhere in my education positive psychology. And a lot of the things that I do are based on the tenets in positive psychology. And so that's kind of what we're going to be starting to talk about a little bit today. So that's a little bit about me, and what I'm thankful for is the opportunity to teach and talk about these things, because I know there's a lot of power in this. And so when I get a chance to share these things, I get excited for that. And so I'm thankful for that. So I don't know how much any of you know about psychology, or about positive psychology in particular. I imagine that we're kind of all over the map in the spectrum, so I'm going to do a really quick overview. Positive psychology emerged in the late 20th century, and it was really what I just said. It was aimed at shifting the focus of the traditional psychology from the pathology model and dysfunction to starting to study and promote the positive aspects of the human experience, instead of focusing on mental illness and distress. They started shifting the focus to understanding how to enhance human well-being, how to enhance happiness, and what are the factors that contribute to that fulfilling life. And so there are some key concepts of positive psychology that I want to talk about tonight. I'm going to put some of these up on the screen if everything works for me. Everything that I'm going to put on the screen, I have emailed to uh, Rebecca, and she can send that out to you all, so that you don't have to worry about writing down or taking notes, anything that you're seeing on the screen. You'll have that to kind of go back and look for or look through in a little while. So give me just 1 second, and hopefully there they are, and there I am in a weird sort of blue screen effect, but it's more about what's on the screen than the little guy in the corner. Um, so we're talking about in the beginning, just here, gratitude, and then moving toward like what that really means to developing positive well-being. Um, so let's look at some of the benefits of positive psychology. Everything that we do in therapy in psychology is evidence-based. At least it's supposed to. We do it because some study somewhere said this works. Um, so here are some of the benefits that we found in research um, on the what happens when we shift our attention from pathology, what's wrong, to what's right. Um, it really starts to emphasize our strengths and our virtues. It focuses on, like I said, what's right with people instead of solely on what's wrong. As we do that, we start to see that people start to function better rather than just treating mental health as the absence of a mental disorder. Like, okay, so you're not depressed or you're not anxious. Instead, it explores like how do you get to be to that place where you're really flourishing in all different aspects of your life. It looks at the subjective well-being, not just because I went through a checklist and said, all right, you don't have these symptoms anymore, but what is your like, you know, perception of your life and the positive emotions that you're experiencing and the purpose and the meaning in your life, and it moves toward positive emotions instead of dredging up all the time pain from the past. We start talking about positive emotions and how to cultivate them, things like joy and gratitude and love and hope, and understanding how those positive emotions contribute to our overall well-being, and that becomes this key focus for us. It focuses on resilience. We all go through hard times. A couple of you have talked about an almost accident and an accident, and that's probably scratching the surface of the hard times that we've been through. Uh, so in positive psychology, we look at the fact that we came through that. Like, how did we come through that? And I'm going to talk about resilience a little bit more tonight. It also focuses on mindfulness and flow. I love the mindful cards and the mindfulness journey that Rebecca is going to be giving and Chad are going to be giving away today. We're going to be talking about that a little bit next time. Um, and what mindfulness really can do for us and how to get into that place of flow. And so that's one of the key aspects of positive psychology. It looks at the overall quality of life. When I work with people, I'm looking at their diet, I'm looking at physical activity, I'm looking at their sleep, I'm looking at the things they do for fun. I can't tell you how many times I prescribe fun, like go out and have fun, like do something fun, come back and tell me about that experience. I know things are hard, but you still can have fun. In fact, fun and joy and laughter are the opposite of trauma. And so trauma has always been one of my specialties, something I studied a lot, and that kind of, because of that, led me to this positive psychology approach, because it's so critical and so effective at treating trauma. um, there are applied positive interventions. It's not just something we talk about. It's not just a theoretical framework, but there are actual interventions that are research-based that we know work and that help us to foster positive emotions and healthy relationships and personal growth. Um, so I know that was a lot, but it's gonna, you can get those notes later. And in a minute, I'm gonna break. If anybody has any questions, I know I talk fast, um, but I will repeat these things. My style of teaching tends to be I'm going to give you a lot of information, then I'm going to come back around and talk about those key points again. Then I'm going to come back around and talk about those key points again. By the time you get to the end of it, hopefully there'll be some understanding, and I will break for questions because I do want to be respectful of your time as well. And I know I have a lot to cover. Um, so we're talking about positive emotions in this sort of positive psychology thing. And what is the importance of doing that? One would be enhanced mental health, like we just talked about. Positive emotions contribute to lower stress levels, anxiety levels, depression levels. They help us to build resilience. So I hear an example of resilience in, and I'm sorry, I forget who said it, but I got in a car accident, but it could have been worse. That's a positive reframe of what happened. And it helps us to cope with life's challenges. It actually improves our physical health as well. We always hear the phrase "you are what you eat," but yeah, that's true, and I'm big on that. But you are also what you think. The way that you think really impacts your physical health. Positive emotions have been associated with better cardiovascular health and immune function and overall physical well-being. You have better sleep when you're not anxious at night, right? Exercise habits are easier when you're feeling good about doing things. And the catch 22 is there when you're depressed, you don't want to exercise, but if you exercise, you'll be less depressed. And so you kind of get stuck in that loop. But we'll talk about those loops and changing the negative feedback loop to a positive feedback loop. Increase life satisfaction. The more we have these positive emotions, the more we feel satisfied with our life. There are enhanced relationships. I know a lot of these seem like common sense, right? If you're thinking positively, your relationships are probably going to be better because you're not looking for the negative in your partner or spouse or friend or coworker. You have a more positive atmosphere, to interact in. Research actually shows that it improves the way that your brain functions, so that you're more creative, so that you can solve problems, so that you can make decisions when you are thinking about, when you are in a state of feeling more positive emotions. Now, I'm going to take a break for a second to say that we can feel positive emotions, and it doesn't mean that's the absence of distress or struggle in our life. Those two things can coexist. And a lot of times I think that's where we struggle. We think, all right, so I'd have these positive emotions. If all of these things in my life got better, I could feel that way. But uh, let's face it, rarely are all the circumstances in our life going to line up like that. So, learning how to have positive emotions in the midst of challenges and struggle is key. And it's one of the things that we talk about a lot in positive psychology. Actually, people who have positive emotions and think positively live longer. It really is, and a lot of research increased to longevity, but not just that, healthier aging, more fulfilling life. So not just being older, but being older and being healthier when we can get to that point. Stress reduction. Um, Cortisol, that stress hormone, is what just wreaks havoc on our body. It comes from negative thoughts, depression and anxiety. As we lower those cortisol levels by thinking and having positive emotions and cultivating positive emotions, our body's stress response is reduced and we start finding more emotional balance. Because of that, we have increased productivity. There's research that shows that, and the more positive a workplace is, the more productive people are. I know when I was looking for a job and a place to work, I spent time not just being interviewed, but talking to some of the people I was going to work with, looking at how they felt. One of the great things about having been in the psychology or counseling field for a long time, I got pretty good at reading people. So I kind of know if somebody's lying to me. So when I'm talking to people, I'm like, yeah, 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 no, no. That you're giving me a line. The people that I met, they were genuinely, excited and felt good about where they worked, and I wanted to be a part of that team. Um, Again, resilience and coping, it is improved when we have these positive emotions, and it helps us to better regulate our emotions. When we do all of that, something really incredible happens. We start giving back more. Our altruism and our pro-social behavior, our ability to look and see the needs of others, is increased, and we start feeling more connected to other people. We start feeling more a part of a community. And those things all lead to just an overall better quality of life. Um, Positive emotions really contribute to that. Now, you see how all these things are kind of related, which then kind of leads to more happiness and fulfillment, which gets us into this sort of positive feedback loop. As we start interacting with others in a positive environment, that helps us to be more positive, and those negative cycles that we get stuck in can start to be broken. And I'm really excited for you guys in if as an organization you start looking at practicing more positive, positivity, or just more gratitude, which is where we're going to start because it's one of the most powerful things we can do. It's not only going to improve your individual life, it's going to improve like all of you, as a community, as a group. And then it's going to be easier for you to work on maybe some of your own individual challenges. So one of the best ways I know to cultivate positive emotions is through gratitude. All right. So before I dive into gratitude, are there any questions in that like marathon? Like I know I raced through that, but it was like I said, it's just a foundation. Trust me. By the time we get to this, you'll be like, didn't he already talk about that? Didn't he already talk about that? I will keep coming back, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have now, and then I'll save some time at the end for any other questions that might come up. Any questions? Okay, here we go. Um, and I can't see everybody right now on my screen, so you will have to speak up if you do have a question. We're going to move into what gratitude really is. Okay, so let's do a textbook kind of definition of gratitude. In a real life sort of application, it could be defined as the genuine acknowledgement and appreciation of the positive aspects of one's life, including experiences, relationships, and personal circumstances. So it's internal and external, right? It's sort of all of those things combined. Um, it involves recognizing and expressing thanks for maybe someone's kindness or generosity or for support that's received from others. It's also just recognizing sometimes the inherent value in various aspects of our life. In practical terms, it goes beyond just a mere intellectual understanding of positive elements we're experiencing, but it then starts to be involve this emotional response, a conscious effort to really focus on what's good, even in challenging situations. It's about cultivating this mindset that actively seeks out and acknowledges what good is around me and the positive things that I'm experiencing, and fostering an appreciation for both the big things that happen and the really small moments. And that's where I think sometimes gratitude has its most power, is being thankful for the little tiny things that happen, sometimes just in a split second. Uh, you know, um, I like to record things, whether that be in writing or pictures or video, so a lot of times if I see something really beautiful like a tree or just something unique. One time it was the way a spider web was in this dusty old window, or a sunset or a sunrise. I'll stop and take a picture of it and just take a moment to be thankful for that beauty. So it's kind of weaving it into all kinds of aspects of your life. So we start to ask then, how do I do this if I don't have anything to be grateful for? Maybe none of you are asking that, but having worked with positive psychology for quite some time and worked with a lot of people, on this, it's a question I hear a lot. My life is hell right now. There's nothing to be thankful for. Or, I have all this stuff that's happened to me. There's no way I have anything to be thankful for. And sometimes people are just like, I'm not naturally a positive person. Um, so yeah, I just see the bad and that's what it is. And I don't know how to be grateful. I don't know if I really want to be grateful. So what if you don't have anything to be grateful for? Okay, truth be told, yes, some people are naturally happier than others. Some people are naturally more positive than others. A little bit more, truth be told, self-disclosure, I am not one of those people. I tend to be, by nature, fairly pessimistic, prone to depression, which is probably why I got into the mental health field in the first place. As I was in counseling and learning, hey, I don't have to feel this way, and there are ways around this. I'm like, well, I want to teach this. I want to share this with other people. So when I talk about being positive, I am not one of those naturally bubbly persons that just thinks everything is great, that can be really irritating to me. I have to work really hard at it. And so I'm teaching you the things that I know have worked for me to get to this point, because I believe that it works. I know that it works because of the research, and I know that it works because of what's happened in my own life. So even if you have nothing to be thankful for, when we're trained to look, we start seeing it all around us. Okay, here's some other things that I do know. I know that the best flowers grow in manure. You might have heard that or seen that in a more colorful phrase, but it's true. The crap in our life can fertilize some really awesome things to grow. And it's probably why I am so fascinated by trees. Okay, so I talked about sometimes I see a tree and I get really, I'll take a picture or whatever. Trees for me, and if were ever living in South Carolina and came to my office for therapy, you'd see that have filled it with pictures of trees that I have taken, this being one of them. This is redwood out in California in the redwoods forest. And it is, they are amazing trees. I don't know if you've ever seen a redwood, but they're just incredible. I want to go because this picture doesn't really show you the scale of this tree. That's my two daughters at the base of this tree. Okay, so it's huge. And you see that massive hole that they're standing in? You can stand inside of that hole and look up and see sky because of a fire that happened probably several hundred years ago. I don't know. Um, and the tree just somehow found a way to keep growing up into the sky, becoming this massive, centuries old tree. And most trees have this ability. At a particularly terrible time in my life, when I was really questioning, kind of like how things were going to ever turn out okay, I went for a walk in the forest, which I often did and still do. And I came up across a tree, which I didn't have a phone with me or anything, so I couldn't take a picture. But it was a tree that kind of grew up, and it was sort of like at this point, somewhere halfway up the tree, it looked like the whole thing had just been struck by lightning or torn in half. And there was this huge wound in this tree. Out of that huge wound, two other like large limbs began to grow, and this tree just kept growing another, I don't know, 25 feet into the sky. And I looked at that tree and I thought, that could be me. Like, so yeah, maybe right now I've been chopped in half, but I can keep growing, right? Just like these redwoods. And I find beauty in that. I find beauty in that kind of resilience. And so even in those sort of lives where we maybe aren't naturally drawn to looking at the things that are positive or don't naturally see those positive things, we learn to find them. And I also have this kind of theory uh, that when we've been through hard times and when we've experienced crap, we tend to appreciate the good times and see joy more. In fact, one of my favorite poets says this: out of suffering have emerged the strongest souls. The most massive characters are seared with scars. Um, there are reasons to be thankful. Again, I go back to this tree. If you were standing there, you'd see all of the scars and all of the wounds on this tree, but you can't help but be awed by it. There are some out there you can drive cars through. It's just really incredible. And to see people who can do that is probably for me one of the most amazing things that I get to experience, and one of the reasons I love my work so much. I started working about a year and a couple months ago with a woman who reminds me a lot of this tree. In fact, somewhere along the way, we started looking at this tree and talking about how she was a lot like this tree. So we're talking about being grateful when there's nothing to be grateful for. She was a woman whose father, about 40 years old, whose father had left her when she was a child after abusing her, whose stepfather had abused her. She came to me about 2 months after her husband was murdered. They had had a kind of rocky relationship. She was the father of two of her children, but she loved him and thought that their marriage was okay. He was a drug dealer. It wasn't entirely surprising, I guess, that he got murdered. What was really surprising is that while she was in the hospital, um, watching him die, and then after he did die, and the police were taking her statement, she met a woman who identified herself as this man's girlfriend, her husband's girlfriend. She had no idea that he had been cheating on her for years with this woman. On top of losing her husband, she had to learn in that moment that he had also been unfaithful to her for years, um, and had another family with this person. A couple months after learning all this, she came to therapy. How is she going to deal with all this? At the end of the second session, she found one thing to be grateful for. Now, a year and some months into it, I am regularly awed by her ability to give thanks, by her ability to be grateful. She's really thriving. She's one of my favorite people to see because she always finds something positive. She always finds some reason to be thankful, to be grateful in a place where she has every right to be bitter, every right to be angry, and she has been angry and she has been bitter. But in the middle of all of it, she still finds reasons to give thanks, to be thankful for what she does have. Multiple times I've been crying with her, not because I'm so overwhelmed by her tragedies, but because I'm just in awe of her like I would be this redwood. I just find those kind of things, that kind of gratitude, really inspiring. Um, Here's what I know. Circumstances then don't create gratitude. Our mindset does. There's been some really interesting studies done of lottery winners who were miserable before they won the lottery, had all the money in the world, and were miserable after they won the lottery. It didn't matter. The circumstances changed. They got everything they thought they wanted, and they were still miserable. There's also been similar studies done of paraplegics, people who were, healthy, and then at one point had some kind of accident, and then, had this crippling accident where they could no longer use their body. And what was interesting is that all of them returned to their base mindset or their base emotional state. If they were pessimists before the accident, they were pessimists after. If they were positive before the accident, they were positive after. Circumstances don't seem to really impact our mindset all that much. What we focus on, though, grows. That's the positive, that's the foundation of positive psychology. We see what we're looking for. So it's all about perspective. I don't know what you see here in this woman. I have to sneak out of the screen a little bit. Um, some people look in this image and they see a beautiful young woman sort of turning away from them. Maybe she's wearing a fur coat and she's got this like feathery headdress on. You can see her eyelashes and her ear and a very, spelt chin, Other people look at this and instead see sort of an elderly old woman with a very large, pronounced nose, a very long chin as she's looking down. She's looks like she's got a hood on over her, sort of discouraging. I don't know. Once you see one, it can be hard to see the other. When you see them both, you can kind of shift your gaze back and forth. It really is all about perspective. And that's what positive psychology, that's what gratitude is really about. I want you to think for a second about people who you might know that sort of have this sort of negative perspective or a victim mentality. Life is always happening to them. Maybe the world is out to get them, or maybe you feel like that sometimes, that bad things keep happening to me. Why do all these bad things keep happening? I want you to listen for just a second to some insurance reports. And what I find really interesting is the way these people think, how they describe what happened to them as if they had nothing to do with it, for most of them, just sort of like the world was out to get them. One person wrote, coming home, I drove into the wrong house and collided with a tree I don't have. Um, so, kind of making a mistake and not owning it. Another person wrote, the other car collided with mine without giving warning of its intention. I don't know that we have lights on our cars that tell us I'm about to hit you. Another person said, I collided with a stationary truck coming the other way. I don't know how that makes sense, but to them it did. This person I just thought this was terrible. It said a truck backed through my windshield into my wife's face. Again, just sort of these things just happening to you. Here, a person said a pedestrian hit me and went under my car. It seemed more like you hit the pedestrian, but okay. Another person that I had been driving for 40 years when I fell asleep at the wheel and had an accident. Well, probably should have taken a break. 40 years is a long time. Another person said, I was on my way to the doctors with rear end trouble when my universal joint gave way, causing me to have an accident, which just sounds, I don't know, funny to me, a very personal problem. Another person blames the car. My car was legally parked as it backed into the other vehicle. Okay, those two things don't work together. Another pedestrian, poor guy. The pedestrian had no idea which direction to go, so I ran over him. Because I don't know. Another person said, I was sure the old fellow would never make it to the other side of the road when I struck him. Um, Another person just was really descriptive of what was going on. Said, I saw the slow moving, sad faced old gentleman as he bounced off the hood of my car. Another person blames the telephone pole. The telephone pole was approaching fast. I attempted to swerve out of its path when it struck my front end. Those moving telephone poles are such a menace. The guy was all over the road. I had to swerve a number of times before I hit him. Okay, so we all have bad experiences, and some people really have really bad experiences. I just want to read one more insurance report before I finish. It's a guy who has this really terrible story. Um, he writes, when I got to the building, I found the storm, this was after a hurricane, had knocked off some bricks around the top. So I rigged up a beam with a pulley at the top of the building and hoisted up a couple barrels full of bricks. When I had fixed the damaged area, there were a lot of bricks left over. Then I went to the bottom and began releasing the line. Unfortunately, the barrel of bricks was much heavier than I was. And before I knew what was happening, the barrel started coming down, jerking me up. I decided to hang on since I was too far off the ground by then to jump, and halfway up, I met the barrel of bricks coming down fast. I received a hard blow on my shoulder. I then continued to the top, banging my head against the beam and getting my fingers pinched and jammed in the pulley. When the barrel hit the ground hard, it burst its bottom, allowing the bricks to spill out. I was now heavier than the barrel, so I started down again at a high speed. Halfway down, I met the barrel coming up fast and received severe injuries to my shins. When I hit the ground, I landed on the pile of spilled bricks, getting several painful cuts and deep bruises. At this point, I must have lost my presence of mind because I let go of my grip on the line. The barrel came down fast, giving me another blow on my head and putting me in the hospital. Bad day. Even in those bad times, there are reasons or ways we can find gratitude. We can work at still being grateful. I have another story I want to tell you that I use a lot with people who are going through difficult time. This one uh, probably won't make you laugh, but it might cause some confusion if you've never heard it before. It's just a parable, an old story actually from the Buddhist tradition of the tiger and the berries. So there's a story of a man who was in the jungle. He was walking in the jungle when he stumbled upon a tiger. The tiger, being hungry, gave chase and started running after this man. The man ran as fast as he could, looking back frequently to note that the tiger was continuing to gain on him. He ran as fast as he could, and he ran and he ran. Not looking where he was going, he actually ran right over a cliff, landed about 10 feet below on an outcrop of rock. He looked down and he saw that below him was this raging river, so he couldn't climb down. He looked up and saw that above him, the tiger was just sort of hungrily pacing along the top of that cliff, waiting for the man to climb back up, so he couldn't go back up. It was at that moment that he looked at the side of the cliff and saw there was this little bush sort of growing out from the rock face, and it had a couple berries on it. So he just picked and ate the berries. That story was told to me at a time in my life when I didn't think things were going really great, and I was a little frustrated and actually angered by this story. I really needed advice on how to get away from the tiger, not be told to just eat berries. But really, that's the heart of gratitude. Finding ways to be grateful for what you do have, even when it seems like everything around you is falling apart. So, what are the benefits of practicing gratitude? All of the things that we just mentioned. So, I am going to race through these before we end by talking about how you're going to practice gratitude between now and next workshop. Here they are: improved mental health, enhanced physical health, increased life satisfaction, improved relationships, optimism and positive outlook, reduced stress levels, enhanced self-esteem, increased productivity, emotional regulation, and long-term health benefits all come from practicing gratitude, just as they do any sort of positive emotions. All right. So I want to be practical. That's been one of the things that I guess has been sort of a hallmark of who I am. Whether it be preaching or teaching or in therapy, it's just like if you don't walk away with something to do, then okay. If you just walk away feeling a little bit inspired, that's great. If you walk away feeling a little bit good, that's awesome. But if you walk away with something to do to really apply this, that's the goal. Like that's better. So we're gonna do this. Gratitude journal. Okay, some of us love to journal, some of us hate to journal, but it works and it's really helpful and it's really a great thing. I'm going to make this as easy as possible for all of us. Um, Gratitude journaling is one of those, tested interventions that's used in positive psychology, um, and has really great benefits. Um, I'm going to break it down. And again, all of the things that you're seeing on these slides, I've given to Chad and Rebecca so they can email them to you. So these are the steps for what we want to do with this gratitude journal. The first thing is select a journal. It doesn't matter what it is. It can be a notebook. It can be a computer. It can be your phone. It can be written. It can be a video. Whatever you want to do, select how you're going to record this. Then set a regular time. Okay. I'm going to do it when I wake up in the morning before I do anything else. I'm going to do it before I fall asleep at night. I'm going to do it on my lunch break. Just find that time in your schedule when you know you can dedicate a little bit of time to this and do it each day. Then you're going to reflect on a positive experience. Um, Something again, you're going to start looking at something positive and then moving beyond just, I'm thankful that I have a roof over my head. We're going to move to like really identify three things in this positive experience for which you're really truly grateful. Um, be really specific and reflective. Those are, as we move down here, this is where we start failing, at least in my experience. People will come back and they'll be like, all right, so I wrote down, you know, 5 things this week that I was grateful for. Okay, tell me about that. Well, I was thankful for my car. I was thankful for my house. I was thankful for my dog. What about that were you thankful for? I didn't write that down. This doesn't really work for me. Okay, it didn't work because you didn't do it. You wrote a list. A journal isn't a list. That's why I'm breaking this kind of up, right? Really reflect on that positive experience. Identify 3 things about it that were positive. Be very specific and reflective about it. Why was it positive? And how did it make you feel? Oh my goodness. The thing I said I would never say when I became a therapist was something that was said to 12-year-old, no, 16-year-old Chad, by the therapist that I had when I was 16 because I was a mess and my parents were like, "Oh, he needs therapy. That'll fix him." Um, and it kind of didn't, partially because after I said, "No matter what," to this guy, Kevin, his pat answer, his only response to me was always, "And how did that make you feel?" And I said I would never say that to anybody. And so I just find different phrases or different ways to ask the same stupid question because it matters. Um, it does matter what we're feeling about it. So when you're writing down these like positive experiences and reflecting on it, really reflect about how it made you feel and move beyond good. Well, it made me feel good. Usually when we feel gratitude, we feel good. I don't know. Sometimes I feel awe. Sometimes I feel overwhelmed. Sometimes when I'm really thankful, I feel sad too. And reflecting on some of that too. So really stop and think about what, you're feeling in that moment. Those last 3 steps are what is going to make the gratitude journal really effective for you and help you begin to be gracious just naturally, like in the rest of your life in different ways. And here's the other thing that frequently is a reason why this doesn't work for people is consistency. I did it for a couple days and it didn't work. Okay, do it every day this week, and then do it every day next week, and then do it every day the next week, and then let's talk. Okay. If it doesn't happen every day, no big deal. I'm big on unconditional positive regard. And in this setting, I'm not going to be judging or looking at or grading. But I really want to encourage you. If it doesn't happen one day, don't beat yourself up. Not a big deal. Just shoot for like 4 or 5 days between now and next Sunday night of gratitude journaling. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. It doesn't have to be poetry. It doesn't have to be pages. You could really do everything that's on this slide in 10 minutes. If it takes you an hour, awesome if you've got that kind of time. A lot of us don't. But go easy on yourself and let it, just sort of happen, right? So start small and then kind of build on it. You're looking at doing it and thinking about a positive experience that happened that day, or that happened the day before if you're doing it in the morning. If you don't have one of those things, go ahead and dig back into your life and find something, else that you might want to reflect on and really think about being grateful for. These can be small things or they can be huge things. Because we only have 4 sessions, I'm going to throw another assignment out. Now, this one, though, is not to be done this week necessarily, just something I want you to begin processing and thinking about between, over these next 4 weeks. And hopefully, some of you will be able to do it and report back how it went for you. And that's the gratitude letter. You know how we said, or I said, one of the benefits of gratitude is deeper connection with others and community, and it fosters healthy relationships. This is one of the greatest ways I know to see that reality play out, is to write a letter of thanks. Now, this is not just a thank you card necessarily, okay? But it's a gratitude letter to somebody. So again, you just choose the recipient. Then you reflect on the specifics, like specifically, what are you thankful for from this person? It can be a gift they gave you. It can be something they did for you. It can be a part of who they are, a role that they play in your life. Um, you know, um, the deeper you go with this, the more impact ultimately it will have, in that relationship and for you. Then, when you've decided on what the specifics are and who the person is, really express that gratitude sincerely and share the impact that it had on you, that they gave you this, they did this, they play this role in your life, they were there for you when they, treated you as they, whatever that is. Share how it changed you or how it impacted you, how it encouraged you or uplifted you or brought you through or inspired you or just whatever. Really share that. Express appreciation for the relationship that you have with them. Consider how you're going to deliver it. This is more of a practical thing. Email, okay. Handwritten letter that you send in snail mail, kind of cool. Video, that works. You can do this however you want. Um, it could even be a text, if you wanted it to be. Uh, yeah, it could be a text. I don't want to judge texting. In fact, okay, so let me reframe. Texting might be cool because you might get a really immediate response. Um, so that might be a cool way to do it, but you want to do more than just, again, 3 or 4 lines. And so I guess that's why I'm thinking of text. I'm thinking 3 or 4 lines isn't what I'm looking for. You're really looking for a couple paragraphs here, I think. But I've also gotten texts from people that are paragraphs long. So if that's your style, you do you, go for it. And then when you're done, go back to that gratitude journal and reflect on the experience. Like, what was it like for you writing that letter? What was it like, when you received the response? How did it help you become more grateful of the things around you and that sort of thing? Again, this slide is in the PDF that I sent to Chad and Rebecca. So you'll have that sent to you so that you've got this assignment. And again, the gratitude journaling 4 or 5 times before our next session. And we are going to start talking about that. Like, what was your experience when we start our next workshop? I'm not going to make anybody do it, of course, but anybody who wants to share, I'd love to hear or even read some of it. Gratitude tends to be contagious. And so I'm building in time for us to share this with others next session, workshop. And the letter, again, if somebody wants to share, that would be awesome. I'm sure it would be inspiring for us. But you don't have to, and you don't have to do that this week. You could do it, anytime during this workshop or even afterwards. So gratitude ultimately is a choice. It is not something that you have to have naturally. It's something that you work at doing. I've given you two ways to begin practicing gratitude this week. Um, and I bet you guys will come up with all kinds of other ways to inspire us next time with how you've been working at being more um, grateful. So I guess, it comes down to like what will you choose to do in spite of maybe some of the challenges that you're facing or some of the hard times that you're going through. You could still choose right now in this moment to practice gratitude, to find the berries that might be somewhere around you and, enjoy those because they are around you. They really are. We just have to start having eyes to see it.